I'm Dr. Renee Roth Powers. In this video, I'm going to show you how to effectively stretch stiff and short low back muscles. This stretch you've probably never seen before because most low back stretches involve bending at the hips. What happens when you do low back stretches that involve bending the hips, like a single knee to chest stretch, is that the hip has to bend all of the way before there's any tension that's transmitted to the low back muscles. This range of motion has to reach its limit before there's any degree of stretch or elongation in your low back. If your hips are very flexible, you aren't going to be able to bend your hips to the end of the motion where finally the low back gets some degree of stretch. So I'm going to have my model pull one knee to his chest, and we're going to ask, do you feel any stretch in your lower back? Okay. Another typical low back stretch is a double knee to chest stretch. So I'm going to ask him to bring both knees up to his chest. Now we've got more weight because both legs are pulling, and the hip is at the very end of the range of motion. Do you feel any stretch or tension in your low back? So he has very flexible hips. Those hips bend a long way, and there is no stretch that's then transmitted to the low back. The key to getting an effective low back stretch is to keep the hips from bending. That way you can stretch the low back muscles in a very targeted way and get them to elongate without depending on the hips coming to the very end of their range of motion and then transmitting a stretch to your lower back. Let's take a look at the options. Now we're ready to demonstrate how you're going to stretch tight, stiff lower back muscles without letting your hips move. Theo's going to put his back against a wall, and what he's going to do is he's going to put the lower part of his spine, the sacrum, and his gluteal muscles against the wall, so the wall basically holds the pelvis in place. That's what's going to keep the hips from bending. He's going to turn around and get into position. And a couple of things to notice here. One is the distance from the wall where his feet are resting. It's a good at least 10 inches. And then he's going to just softly bend his knees. You're not going to stand there with your knees straight and your back rigid against the wall. It's going to be a soft bend, feet are away from the wall. The area that you're going to keep contact with is here at the very base of the spine and your gluteal muscles or your hips. The way I suggest that most people start this is by putting their hands on the back of a chair. So we're going to pull a chair in. He's going to put his hands on the chair, and then what he's going to do is he's going to bend his elbows. He's going to lower his chest toward the chair. His hips and buttocks are staying against the wall. The wall is keeping his hips from bending. Do you feel a stretch in your lower back? So we're getting tension through this region, especially the low back. One key here is you don't want to hear the sound of your clothing sliding against the wall. The wall should basically be holding your hips in place. So there are a couple of variations you can do. We're going to slide the chair away, and after a while, the chair might feel like it's not necessary. So you can just put your hands on your thighs, and you're going to use your thighs as support for your upper body as you lean forward. So he's going to pivot forward. The wall is blocking the motion of his hips. He's using his hands against his thighs as a degree of support, and he's keeping his back relatively flat until he feels tension or a stretch across the lower back. If you don't happen to have a wall available, once you practice this and you get the feel of not letting your hips bend, you can step forward. He's going to put his hands on the upper part of his buttocks, and he's just going to use his hands gently. It doesn't take a big force. You're just going to basically hold them there. He's going to pivot forward the exact same way. He's pivoting forward from the spine. He is not pivoting forward at his hips. That way you get a stretch across the low back muscles almost immediately. I suggest that you hold these stretches for a maximum of 10 seconds. You can repeat them 4 or 5 times. If you have a serious back problem, absolutely consult your healthcare practitioner before doing any of these stretches.